चलिए अब आपको लिए चलते हैं मुंबई, जहां एबीपी नेटवर्क की खास पेशकश आइडियाज ऑफ इंडिया का मंच सजा है।
कल हो ना हो, and they used to call her Namjo. Okay. In the office, she was Namrata Joshi, and I've told the story, and I think she's going to get very annoyed that I'm telling it again. But that's how she just called it the Kejo something, and it just got stuck right after that.
I think it goes with the whole veneer of being the cool Kejo, right? It goes with your personality in a certain way.
Yeah, well, it's stuck. I don't know whether it's deserving or not, but yeah, it's just the way it is.
The reason I'm saying that, Karan, is also the fact that you have this whole cool veneer, but behind that is a pretty astute businessman. And most people, of course, they realize it given the sheer quantum of the output that your production company comes out with month after month and for years after years. But when you actually, and this is a company that your father founded, when you actually took over, it wasn't such a big company, right?
Well, my father was I'm very proud to say was a very loved man in the film fraternity, and knew everybody and has been working in the movies since the 1950s. He used to do production, and he was very loved and revered by the fraternity. Unfortunately, besides his very first film as producer, Dostana, there were a series of films that hadn't worked commercially. So while he was known and loved and had made very massive cinematic experiences, they hadn't been successful at the box office. So it was after 1980 when Dostana released. It was in 1998 when I directed Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, is when he gave his next success. So he actually had 18 years of failures actually. Wow. After Dostana. So it wasn't a very easy time. I mean, people really don't think about that today when they think of Dharma Productions, but it was actually, we're rather nascent because I started actively producing multiple films only post 2008, 2009 with Dostana and Wake Up Sid and films like which we started. So it's about like really 14 years old in the business where we're actively producing content.
I mean, it would be fair to say that even in these 14, 15 years that you've been around as a producer, Dharma Productions gets almost the same billing, at least in the mindscape, in popular culture, as, say, Yash Raj. And Yash Raj has been around for obviously much, much longer, right? My question to you is, because we're talking about names, and I know you don't like being called Kejo because it sounds like Kaju, but Dharma is named after, most people won't know this, is named after an individual called Dharma Hinduja.
He was Dharam actually.
Okay.
Mr. S.P. Hinduja's son, Dharam. My father was financed by the prolific Hinduja family when he decided to embark on being a producer. Dharma Productions was formulated at that time when he was funded by the Hinduja family, who were also into film financing at that moment of time. S.P. Hinduja was the oldest member of the Hinduja family, and his son was Dharam Hinduja. I say was because he's not alive anymore. And that's the origin of the name. It comes from him actually. And then I think they tweaked it and called it Dharma. His name was Dharam.
Right. And of course, you spoke about how in 98 you made Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. That was your first film as a director. Huge success, but I think it's harder to sustain success. And thereafter you made K3G with like every big movie star there was at the time, right? I mean, Amitabh Bachchan, Shah Rukh Khan, Hrithik Roshan, all rolled into one particular film. What I'm keen to know, Karan, if you were to make your debut as a director in the year 2022, what kind of a film or what kind of project would you go up with? Because is it the same world anymore?
It may not be, but I'm not making anything different just now.
Okay.
So, I'm making a film called Rocky or Rani Ki Prem Kahani. How much do you think I've really progressed from Kuch Kuch Hota Hai? It's a love story. It has family. It has movie stars. It has Ranveer Singh and Alia Bhatt. And of course, supremely talented senior members of the film fraternity, Jaya ji and Shabana ji and Dharam ji and all in the movie. I think I'm going back to the same world. I did go through phases of I would say evolution, perhaps, as a filmmaker, because at one point I wanted to tell a story of extreme dark infidelity. I wanted to tell a socially relevant film like My Name Is Khan. I've also made a film on complex human relationships with Aidil. But there came a time right during the pandemic, I think, is when I felt like I just needed to make a movie that made me feel like I was 25 again. Right. And when I was 25, the only movie I could think of or make was Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, because it was like an accumulation of all the movies that I'd grown up watching. And it's a homage to Raj Kapoor or Yash Chopra, Suraj Barjatya, like all my influences growing up watching movies. And I think that's what I'm doing with Rocky Rani. I'm just going back because I think we are all trying very hard to break the mold, to tear the envelope, cross cinematic boundaries. We're trying as filmmakers, as producers, as content creators. But then we also have forgotten that there was an innocence and a purity to what we're known as. The quintessential Bollywood film,
movie, right.
Which has its heart on its sleeve, which has its songs on your lip, which has a dance for no reason, which has theatrics and drama that possibly don't seem real. But I was like, let's do it again.
Right. Well, the reason I'm also asking you this question is because, let's say, when you made K3G back in 2001, if someone told you that a Batman is releasing, okay, or Jungle Book is releasing, or Spider-Man is releasing, you wouldn't have cared about it, right? It could come in a theater and go for all you care, because there is this whole Bollywood film and there is a Bollywood audience. But now, say in 2021, the biggest film in India was Spider-Man. There's this Hollywood that you have to contend with also.
Absolutely. If we purely speak Hindi film industry, we're not competing, but I want to say, because competing would be giving it a negative connotation. Right. I think we're being inspired every week by not just Hollywood. Within the parameters of our great nation, we have films coming from the South film fraternity that are absolutely killing the box. Look at the numbers of RRR as we speak.
So 20 crore on day one.
Rajamouli is clearly the biggest Indian filmmaker today. And there is no one who can take that mantle away from him. He's enormous. He's gigantic, just like his brand is as high as movies. Not just Batman or Spider-Man or now Avatar that will come in December. Right. These are all massive cinematic spectacles. But when we used to first call our cinema, crossover cinema, right. Invariably has to say, when you really cross, it's all over, because it's like it's not really doing very much for you here. You're just crossing over. Right. But the real true crossover is within the boundaries of our country, when the film cinemas from not only Telugu but Tamil, Malayalam cinema, Kannada cinema, the digital explosion has exposed all this great content to viewers across the nation. Look at these numbers; they're massive. And Hindi Pushpa has just released to massive success. Allu Arjun is a household name today. Everyone is dancing to those songs. They're dancing to the Telugu songs. They're dancing like in the north to the tunes from the south. That is immensely amazing, and that is what I call true crossover. So when you say the Hindi film industry is competing, I say we're being inspired on a weekly basis by the film industry from the south, by what is happening in Hollywood, by what's happening digitally. Everyone is kind of coming all together. So we've got to completely watch what we do at every step, because we were at one point, Bollywood is and was globally known, as this brand. But the origin of that is the Hindi film industry, but it's no longer that. And Rajamouli in his own words has said that we should call it the Indian film industry now, because it's all about that. We should stop addressing it as Bollywood, because that is that is a term of the past now. We have to say Indian, because if a Malayalam film is being loved the way it is, if a Telugu film is doing these theatrical numbers, if a Tamil film is being remade as we speak, if a Kannada film which is releasing now, KGF, which is going to open huge, what are we talking about? We're talking about the Indian movies, the Indian film industry. It's no longer Hindi or Bollywood or Tollywood or Collywood or all these terms we are given. Right. We have to proudly walk the talk as Indian cinema.
Well, the CEO of your company, Apurva, he says that actually there aren't that many filmmakers in Bombay blessed with that level of finesse to reach out to such massive audiences as we've learned from the South. Would you agree with him?
The thing is, yes, I find the level, what happens is, and I'm saying this, I'm putting myself in the same bracket when I say this. All of us in Hindi cinema, I feel sometimes fall prey to what I call herd mentality. Is like enterprise. I'm not a public listed company. I can't go out there and create a platform, and I can't do it. So I'm very happy being a storyteller, being a content creator, and I'm happy there are the big boys and girls at Netflix and Amazon and Hotstar and Z5 and Alt Balaji and all these platforms, which is great because it gives us a platform for us to exhibit enormous number of content. In the last 1 year, since Gunjan Saxena released in 2020, we put out about 7 to 8 pieces of content, be it digital shows, non-fiction shows, films. Like we've put out where people were struggling to put anything out, we've actually put out that much work from Dharma and Dharmatic. And we're proud of that. We're proud of the fact that we've been able to leverage these massive platforms. And now that cinemas are back, so are we.
So if things were normal, would you have, say, released a Geraiyan in the theaters? Or would you have like felt cagey about it in the sense
so
how people going to
I'll be honest with you, I would have released Shesha if things were normal in the cinemas for sure, because it was that spectacle for a large screen. It was made to be a theatrical experience. That is something that I felt. But Geraiyan is, by its ethos, by its texture, by its syntax, by its style of storytelling, and the fact that it swishes genres, and the way it was actually a definite film for an OTT platform, because I feel it would have found its best home at a home like that, and which it did. I was totally for that. Even when I watched the dailies, Shakun, Deepika, we were all on board with that decision.
I mean, you're the only filmmaker I know in all these years who actually took that film, put together a bunch of film critics and asked them to like sort of talk about it once the film's released. And I was wondering while I was sitting there, like what would you even learn from an experience like this? Because the film is done. There's nothing else to fix. What did you learn from the experience, Karan?
Look, it was a strategic decision, man.
Okay.
It was not for me to learn. It was for me to exhibit.
Okay.
I'm being very honest.
Right.
It was, Geraiyan had so much discussion around it. There was so much buzz. People who loved it, people who hated it, people who didn't agree with it, people who absolutely agreed with it. It was a modern take of modern relationships, infidelity, dark areas of the human mind. I felt like it was very polarizing in its reviews. We had a lot of very esteemed, prolific critics who had absolutely loved it, and those that had absolutely not. I told Amazon, and they were really happy to be on board, that we should take a chance. Get 10 critics in one discussion. 5 who loved it, 5 who didn't. And let's talk about it. Let's be open. Why are we afraid of criticism? We should envelop it. How do we get better? And the fact that we do this will actually just create more energy around the film. We'll actually create more buzz, because then people will want to see which side they're on when they see a discussion like this, which is what happened. It really helped us because we put it out there and we put out the polarization. And you should actually not be shy. I keep feeling, why are we worried about people who don't like something? They have a point of view, you must respect it. I know that I read everyone's perspective, and if that means putting it out there, why not? I would encourage us to do that with every film, if everybody was on board.
I don't think we'll find too many of those in this city for sure. But Karan, the way you're describing where we are in 2022 in terms of what kind of content becomes theatrical, what kind of content goes straight into an OTT platform, is this roughly where we were, say, in the early 2000s, where there was such a thing as the Masi film, the single screen film, and the other was the multiplex film? All of them, of course, eventually merge into the same film, right? Multiplex audience is the same as a single screen audience eventually. But is that where we are, you think? That there is such a thing as mass?
Look, we give these terms. If you just get academic of pure content and genre, you know that these are the films, X amount of films that have the prerequisites that will work massively. And you have to go back to the drawing board about what you spent on it. If you've spent a massive number for a film that you feel will be a certain number that doesn't give you a recovery because of its genre or its content or the way the filmmaker has told the story, you should opt for a safer option. But if you feel like you have what it takes, if you have the prerequisites of the elements that you know that multiplexes, single screens across the country and across state, again, when I say this, I talk about the Hindi film.
Hindi film,
industry,
yes. We would have never imagined 5 years ago that the biggest film right now in India and in the Hindi market stars NTR Jr. and Ram Charan.
Yes.
You know, hardcore Telugu stars. And let's be honest, and Ajay Devgan, who's actually pretty much a special appearance, an extra, if you may, in a film like that. And he's a hardcore Bollywood star.
Well,
or even Alia, for that matter. She's a special appearance or an extra, if you may.
Well, I feel it's the coming together. Why talk about Ajay Devgan is a massive star, and I think he's done that in homage and respect to a filmmaker like Rajamouli. It's also to give the pan-India. Alia Bhatt has a very tiny part in that film. Everyone did it because they want to respect the genius of Rajamouli. And I think that when you say the South film industry has held on to their movie stardom, yes, because their content has been such. The way they've positioned their movies have been such. The Telugu film industry has made a certain kind of film which is all about its inherent heroism. You know, it's inherent, like it's had this kind of storytelling pivoting around the leading man. You know, there are few, of course, wonderful female actors that have done solo-led films. But we in Hindi cinema have got widely eclectic in terms of our storytelling choices. We haven't held on. I think the way we positioned Bachchan in the 70s, you know, which actually began the entire concept of
the heroism,
the hero, the heroism and all that. We started altering that in the 90s when romance took over, where Shah Rukh Khan became the face of love in cinema. It started from, you know, of course, Salman Khan in 1994 with Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, went on to Shah Rukh in 95, who then became the face of romance in India, where he was the first leading man. There was a hero per se, who was crying in the climax of most movies. He was not fighting, he was crying. He became vulnerable, he became accessible, he became like everyone's favorite, like husband, brother, father, son, like everything. We changed our syntax. Then we went completely in different paths with 2001, where Lagan and Dil Chahta Hai were born. And we went into a totally different zone of storytelling. So we changed our syntax completely. Whereas Telugu cinema, and I specifically say Telugu, because Telugu its syntax is very different from Tamil or Malayalam or Kannada cinema. They held on to their hero.
Right.
Which is why that cinema is always celebrated in the way it is. We chose a different path.
I mean, Salman took that direction, and he would remake a Telugu film
but he
with
was
himself
just
in it.
one superstar doing that.
One guy like that.
He was doing that because Amir and Shah Rukh were telling different stories. Amir was doing the Tare Zameen Par. He was doing the Rang De Basanti. He was doing the Dangal. He was doing different stories. Shah Rukh Khan was even dabbling in an Ashoka and a Paheli while he was doing the big movie vehicles. They were doing different things. Whereas it was respected Chiranjeevi sir, Rajni sir, or it was going down to Mahesh Babu, Allu Arjun, Ram Charan, you know, all of them, Prabhas, they were doing the syntax of the leading man. The heroism was kept intact in storytelling, narrative, and films that were made by directors who knew what they were chasing. We told different stories, we took a different path, we have a different result today.
Right. You know, of course, they also in the process took over Hindi heartland, and that can't be denied. It's showing in numbers too. I must let the viewers know that I've had only one request from Karan's team, is to never ask him a question which is personally directed at someone, especially if the person is not in the audience. But I have to ask you this one thing, Karan, and this is one thing that's also changed over the past 2-3 years, or 2 years for sure. When you look at media in general, social media in particular, even mainstream television news media for that matter, this vilification of Bollywood, like they hate Bollywood, ban Bollywood, boycott this movie. Firstly, and I'm sure you face a lot of these trolls. You probably do this every morning, as you said, like a serpent, directed at you. What did you make of it? What do you make of this particular thing that's been going on past 2 years?
So, emotionally speaking, and I'm actually kind of giving an interview like this White Conference after over 2 years. Emotionally speaking, it was a very difficult time for me and my family 2 years ago. It was not easy because we brought to the surface things that should not have been brought to the surface, but we also reacted to that surface. We should have known that we are actually talking about a very tiny percentage of people who just are very actively loud on social media. So you take those things to heart because they pop up much more to you on your timeline. So they're faceless, they're nameless, they're trolling you, they're saying the most they're saying the most insensitive, absolutely degrading and defaming you on public platforms. But we see that. We don't see the love. We suddenly do not see the love that exists in large numbers. Larger than the negativity, larger than the trolling, larger than anything that you face in terms of criticism. We choose to see the bad, we react to the bad, we bring ourselves down. I'm like, take a beat, which I've done. I've gone and analyzed it within, and I said, why am I sad about faceless, nameless people who are speaking about me? I shouldn't care about them. I should actually be completely grateful to the love that I get, which is in larger numbers. That's what I've chosen to do, Mayank. It's like the only way to do is to go into Zen mode within, appreciate and be grateful for what comes your way. And whatever's negative, let them be. They have their own karma to deal with.
30 minutes is all it takes. Is, in fact, just the warming up of coffee if you're going to have a conversation with Karan. But that's been our time. Thank you so much, Karan, for doing this. This was a pleasure.
Thank you, Mayank. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayank, indeed. And thank you, Karan, for being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, absolutely nobody knows the most perfect blend of arts and commerce like Karan Johar does. A big round of applause for him right now. And I'd like to invite on stage Navroz Dondi, founder of Create G's, to present Karan with a very small token of our gratitude. Our sincere thanks to Karan for being here today. Don't be hesitant, clappers. Louder, louder. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you both, gentlemen. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to be shifting gears quite a bit right now from talking about the art of filmmaking.